Hi, hello, my name's Ursula and this is my channel Book Blog. For those who don't know, I enjoy looking at queer fiction and occasionally I create images out of it. Today I am doing my own tag which I created for IDAHOBIT. Now, for those people who don't know what IDAHOBIT is, it is the International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia, Intersexism and Transphobia. This tag is all related to the celebration of this day and gives you the opportunity as allies to just talk about being an ally or supporter of representation within the queer community which are in different novels. The cross genres, it doesn't matter the scale of the involvement of queer representation, I just want you to talk about the different people who are represented in these books. Okay, so in terms of for my tag, these are the books which I have chosen, starting with I. I is Indomitable, Inspirited. So this is about those characters which overcome adversity. And for this one, I chose Ruby Fruit Jungle, which is by Rita Mae Brown. Now this has a lead character called Molly, who is this kind of indomitable, spirited woman. And you follow her through childhood from the 1940s through to the 1960s. So it's kind of like her coming of age period and just what happens to her up to the point where she manages to get to university. Through the progression of the book, she is put upon by the world in different ways as a woman who is interested in other women, particularly at this time. She doesn't really understand what everyone's beef is about. She's kind of like, this is my thing, this has no effect or impact on you, why are you having a go at me? And she's really kind of frank and clear about that, but she keeps on coming up against these aggressions, either microaggressions or like full-on aggressions. And it's about how she navigates that space. And what I really love about Molly's character is she's quite imaginative and inventive in how she responds to those situations. Sometimes she really exploits the system in really crafty, quite cunning ways, and I just love her for that. But also, there are some things that really happen to her in which she didn't kind of create. They are just situations that occur. Like she's homeless in New York at one stage. The stuff that happens to her in New York is quite interesting in a lot of ways, in a lot of different ways. If you've read the book, you will understand. But also, she is put upon against men. She has this ambition to become a film director, and if you can imagine, that's still like an issue right now, which is kind of like crazy as well. But it really describes the situations and how she overcomes them at all those hurdles in different ways. So if you were just looking for a champion and someone who you really want to support, this is a great read. The next letter is D for a dynamic divergence. So I chose Nimona by Noelle Stevenson. So this is about a shapeshifter. So I thought this was kind of cool in terms of the divergence. It's also a graphic novel. The illustrator actually created Fangirl originally, and what I like about this graphic novel is it is going to become a film in 2021. Which is being supported by Disney. In terms of the character Nimona, she's ace representative. What I really like about this is that Nimona is a really peppy, kind of happy-go-lucky sidekick to a supervillain. So it's kind of like a weird topsy-turvy world. It reminds me of Adventure Time in terms of the tone and the way it's presented. Third letter is A for Age of Aquarius. Now this is for those individuals who are able to overcome power in some certain way. And for this one, I chose Ready Player One. Now I'm not actually focusing on Wade Watson, who's the lead character, or Percival, or even Artemis, but I'm actually championing and celebrating H. So in the world of Ready Player One, I feel like this one's been like discussed quite a lot because it has become a really good film by Spielberg. But it's set in a future kind of dystopian world where there is Oasis. And Oasis is an online community created by James Holiday. Now he's died. He wants his empire to be inherited by someone who is deemed worthy. He's a big fan of the 1980s, and he's basically set up an Easter egg hunt to get this golden egg that everybody is offered the opportunity to find these 3 keys. You've got copper, jade, and crystal. And so basically groups of individuals are desperately trying to get them ahead of this other band of people who are labelled 101 or Sixers. And then you've got these gunters who are kind of the individuals and the rest of society who are up against the oppressive kind of corporate body. And the Sixers have this kind of one-tone male faceless character with these barcodes when they enter into Oasis. For the purpose of this tag, is I'm actually getting into a bit of spoiler territory here, but H's character online is a white male athletic avatar who kind of just fits in, does shoot 'em ups, and is quite successful at what he does. Later on through the course of the book, H is revealed to actually be a woman called Helen Harris who is black and interested in the women. So, and in terms of the narrative, it talks more about why she feels she had to present herself in this way in order to succeed in the world of Oasis, in this virtual world, which is kind of bizarre as well, because in Oasis you can kind of be anyone you want to be, but for her, she just wants to be a privileged white man. So, like, there's a lot within that statement which is really political and grappling with stuff which is happening right now. And what was really disappointing with the film is it just didn't really tap into any of that. It just really, like, touched on it for about 10 seconds. So, which is interesting in itself in terms of why did that happen. But I thought in terms of as a concept and how it's a part of this wider story in terms of elements and positions of power and how people navigate the space, and also this kind of love letter to the 80s, it's just a really cool, adventurous book, but it has these added elements woven into it. The next letter is H, which is Healing Hearts. So for this one, I actually chose Slap. Now, Slap is a kind of funny one. It's more about a kind of suburban drama where there was this barbecue and this party outdoors where these groups of families are together, and one parent slaps this misbehaving child of another family, and that creates a rippling impact on all of those families together, because they're all kind of interwoven to each other. And through the course of the book, you get different perspectives. But the character who I'm kind of championing in this story is Richie, who has a backstory which involves cyberbullying and the repercussions of that. The next letter which I'm choosing is Open-Minded Observer. So this is for those outsiders who are able to observe what is happening around them or upon other groups of people that they're kind of aware of. For this one, I chose The Left Hand from Darkness, which is by Ursula K. Guin. So this follows the lead character A, who is an envoy or like a representative on a diplomatic mission. He is sent over to Gretten, which is a world where they have these two kind of main communities that he is trying to engage with to help them join this like intergalactic humanoid coalition. And so he is able to kind of go down, have chats with them, and if it's not going well, he's been able to go back up to his spaceship and come back a bit later on if it's not really working out the way he was hoping. So that's kind of interesting in terms of it as a construct of sci-fi, but what I really liked about the story is the people, the race that he's talking with have both genders. So at some point in their life they are male, and later on will be female, and vice versa, and that will keep on changing in cycles. So the construct of gender is kind of irrelevant in a kind of political context, because everyone is both at some point at time. So the next letter is B for Brave Beings. Now this is about either an individual or a group or cluster or a community where they have to really up their game in some way. So for this one, I chose The Perks of Being a Wallflower, which is by Stephen Chbosky. So for this one was actually set in the 1990s. Charlie is the lead character, who's 15 years old, a real introvert, quite anxious, doesn't have a lot of friends. He ends up befriending these two seniors who are step-siblings. You've got Sam, who's his kind of crush, and you've got Patrick, who's his kind of gay best friend. Within the storyline, it's really good at unpacking a lot of really big, serious issues in terms of there's stuff around mental health and sexual abuse, just generally feeling anxious and like you don't feel a part of other people's lives. It looks at depression. It's really covering a lot of different issues, but in a way which is really accessible and relatable. So I think regardless if this is something that you're facing or something that you just want to learn more about, it is a really good book at covering a lot of different things. The next letter is I for International Inspirations. So for this one, I chose Kafka on the Shore by Haruki and Murakami. So this is a really, really weird story. Like, there's just no other way of telling it. Like, this is about magical realism, so it's kind of set in like a current day setting, but it's like nothing you would recognize at all. And it has these two very kind of separate stories where you've got this kid who doesn't really have a name, but he kind of adopts the name Kafka. And then you've got this old man who has the ability to talk to cats. And it just, I mean, in itself, this sounds quite random, doesn't it? But these stories just seem to navigate these two very separate worlds, and somehow they manage to come together towards the end. But a lot of this is all about a kind of construct of a labyrinth in different layered ways, and some of it's about how you internalize and go through thought processes on a personal level, but also how we experience the world around us and we are traveling through a labyrinth of our lives. I feel like it's a really tricky one to describe. It has probably the best kind of ghost story element that I've come across in terms of the horrific things that happen to cats, which if you wanted to terrify young people in around a campfire situation, that would be my go-to story. It is horrific, really, and scarring, and it's certainly a book which I would like to reread again now that I kind of understand the overarching elements of the story, but I feel like I certainly haven't learned or uncovered all the elements within the story, if that makes sense. But yeah, super surreal, super weird, but really, really cool. In terms of representation, there's a really cool character called Ursula, who's a librarian, who's a hemophiliac and trans representative. He's just a really clever, erudite guy who is able to articulate himself in such a way in which I wish I could. And there are a couple of moments where he has discussions and arguments with other characters, and you were like, oh my god, I wish I could question the way you do. He's also really nurturing and supportive to Kafka, who comes to the library as a place of solitude and protection, having run away from home, and just is there as a bit of a guardian and a guide. And then T, so this is for thoroughly thrilling. Now, this is basically any book that is just really cool and gripping. And so for this one, I chose Days Without End. Now, this is by Sebastian, and I read this a few years ago now. In terms of an adventure, this one takes you on such a brilliant ride. You've got these two key characters, Thomas McNulty, who kind of narrates the story, and he meets John Cole, who he ends up befriends and falls in love with. And it's about this huge kind of saga that happens to them whilst they are amongst different Indian-based wars and civil wars happening in America. So there's this kind of crazy ongoing surroundings which they kind of get drawn and dragged into in different ways. But at its heart, you've got this love story between the two of them where they are just trying to survive. Some stuff happens to them repeatedly. Like, it really describes the landscape, and that really emotes what is happening in the kind of storyline of the book. So in terms of every place that they go to, like has this kind of emotive hook within it, and it's just really beautifully illustrated within that. But towards the end, you are just so holding on to the idea that you just want them all to be safe and for them to get through and everything to be okay, and never know if it is going to turn out that way, because there is a lot that happens which make you think everyone's at risk. And I just felt really unsafe through the entirety of the book, but that is also what made it thrilling at the same time. And that makes up IDAHOBIT. So those are all my book recommendations for now. I recommend everyone taking part. So if you're watching this video, you are tagged. And I have put instructions in the description below so that you can know exactly what you're doing. And remember, if this is outside of the 17th of May, it is totally okay for you to get on board and take part in this tag. This is enough for me for now. Anyway, I hope you're all doing well and good. If you've read any of these books, please let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, I will see you all again real soon.